Hello there, how's it going? We are talking about the book Atomic Habits, and so far we have covered Chapter 1, The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits, Chapter 2, How Your Habits Shape Your Identity, and vice versa. And currently we are at Chapter 3. I have created one video as far as I remember on Chapter 3. This is the second one, second or third. How to build better habits in 4 simple steps. And we talked about why your brain builds habits previously. And let's go over it quickly. So he defined habit as a behavior that you repeat several times and it becomes easier to a point that it becomes automatic. So being able to write with pen and paper can be a habit because you don't have to think too much when you are writing. But suppose you are learning a new language such as Chinese, then you would be thinking too hard on writing each individual letters. So so to think about habit is some behavior that you repeat and then it becomes easier. We were born without any habit. Anything that is easy to us been has become easier through repetitions. And another way to look at habit is a choice. If you can easily choose something, then it is a habit. So, for example, if you can choose to use your smartphone before going to bed, or if you can choose to use a smartphone after waking up, this is a common habit. People, when they wake up, the first thing they do is they check their phones, which is not very good for health, but that's another way to look at a habit. When you come from work, do you choose to play video games? So that's the idea of illusion of choice. You think you are choosing, however, it's if it is too easy to choose. For example, for a smoker, it would be very easy to choose to smoke. But if you offer a cigarette to a non-smoker, they will say no, they will not choose it. So if you, whatever you are choosing, it has been, that choice has been conditioned through habit, through past behaviors. So start choosing good things, not what you have always been choosing. Now let's talk about the next section, the science of how habit works. How habits work. The process of building a habit can be divided into 4 simple steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. This 4 step pattern is the backbone of every habit, and your brain runs through these steps in the same order each time. So, when you want to create a new habit, you will need to think about 4 different aspects of it. Well, you don't need to think about each and every one of them at the same time. Honestly, it can be a bit overwhelming, but whenever you are designing a new habit or breaking an older one, it's a very good idea to run through these steps, especially the first three. Especially the first three. And we will talk about what these are: cue, craving, response, and finally reward. The cue is a bit of information that predicts a reward. Your mind is continuously analyzing your internal and external environment for hints of where rewards are located. Cue is a bit of information that predicts a reward. Now, reward is a very subjective term. What is a reward? Because rewards are not same for everyone, right? For example, smoking, it will give a sense of relief to a smoker. That's his reward, the sense of relief. But to a non smoker, that's not a reward. He will not smoke. So, rewards are extremely subjective. But Q is the piece of information that predicts a reward for you. So, Qs are also subjective in that sense. And Qs can be internal or external. Internal are our feelings, our emotions. So maybe you are feeling tired. That's a cue. And what you would you do? You would go to sleep. That's your reward, is the sense of relaxation. So that's an internal cue. External cue could be going down the sidewalk and seeing a restaurant. When you see a restaurant, you might get a craving to eat. That's an external cue. And in this book, he mainly talks about changing your external cues. So, for example, if you use your phone too much, and it's probably because it's with you all the time. So that's your external cue. You have the information that you have your phone with you all the time. If you want to reduce using your phone, you need to remove the external cue first by moving your phone to a distance. You can put it in another room, you can shut it off, add some friction into your behavior. So that's the cue. Craving are the second step, and they are the motivational force behind every habit. Without some level of motivation or desire, without craving a change, we have no reason to act. Exactly. Let's take an example of the restaurant again. You are going down the sidewalk, you see a restaurant, that's the cue. But what if you are already full? If you are already full, you have no craving to eat. You have no craving to eat. And that's why you won't go into the restaurant. Cravings differ from person to person. In theory, any piece of information could trigger a craving, but in practice, people are not motivated by the same cues. Exactly, people are not motivated by the same cues. One might see a book, that's a cue. You see a book, someone might be very interested in reading it, someone else might not be interested in reading it. One person might see a gaming PC and they will be very interested in playing video games. Another person might not be. Let's say some 50-year-old grandpa, he is not interested in playing video games, but a 20-year-old teen, he would be very interested in playing video game when he sees a gaming computer. So cues are same cues will not generate the same craving. It's highly subjective, and you will need to decide what cues are triggering what kind of bad behaviors for you. And on the example of restaurant, let's look at the third one. The third step is response. The response is the actual behavior you perform, it's the actual habit you perform. If we take an example of the restaurant, let's say you see a restaurant and you are hungry, so you have a craving to eat. However, you don't have the money. You don't you forgot your wallet at home. Now, although you really want to eat, but you can't do it, right? So, in order to make a behavior, in order to not perform the behavior, you have to figure out something that will not let you do it. In the case of a smartphone, you can't use a smartphone when you don't have it. You can't buy junk food if you don't have the money. So although this is quite common sense knowledge, but you can actually apply this kind of information in your daily life. The third step is the response. The response is the actual habit you perform. It is the action you take, which can take the form of a thought or an action. Wow, he also talks about a thought. It, habit can also be a thought. So, what could be an example of a thought? Well, you might see someone very successful than you, then you might think that, well, what would you might think? Well, people will have different opinions. If you look at someone extremely successful than you, one person might have developed the habit of gratitude. Well, it doesn't matter, everyone is going to die, and I'm grateful for what has God given me. That's a habit of repeating this thought whenever you see someone highly successful than you. Or it could be a thought of envy. You might see someone highly successful than you, and you might generate a thought of envy. Whether our response occurs depends on how motivated you are and how much friction is associated with the behavior. Exactly. Motivation we already talked about, which was craving. You must crave junk food in order to eat it. If there is no craving, you wouldn't want to eat it, right? That's motivation. And the second thing is about friction. You forgot your wallet at home. Are you gonna go and pick it up? Or are you just gonna ignore the restaurant? That's the friction. He talks about decreasing the craving as well, but that's require a lot of mental effort. But increasing the friction, that's much easier. And I have personally applied this idea in my own life. When I got very used to eating junk food, that's what I actually did. I stopped bringing my wallet. If I knew I don't need the money, if I knew I'm going out and I don't need money for anything, I will just not pick up my wallet. That way, whenever I come across a restaurant, I won't have a random craving to try something different out. Finally, the response delivers a reward. Rewards are the end goal of every habit. Exactly. Rewards are the end goal of every habit. We do anything for a reason. Rewards, you can say, they are the reason for doing the thing. So, eating, the reason for eating is to satisfy our hunger. The reason for sleeping is to relax. The reason for playing video games would be to entertain ourselves, to cure our boredom. So we don't do the behavior for its own sake. There is a reason to do literally anything we do, anything. We won't do it just for the sake of it, right? You might get a haircut. Well, you are getting haircut because you want to look good. You are taking shower, so you get cleaned. Every behavior has a reason. Now, that reason you can say is the reward. The cue is about noticing the reward. Craving is about wanting the reward. Response is about obtaining the reward. I think that's a very good way to put it out. Cue is about noticing the reward. You see a restaurant. The craving is about wanting the reward. You want to eat food. Response is about obtaining the reward. You actually eat the food and you satisfy your hunger. But if there is no restaurant to see, well, you are just cutting the problem from the root. If there is no restaurant, well, there is no craving and you don't do anything. Or if there is a restaurant and there is a craving, well, if you don't have the wallet, you can't eat it. If our behavior is insufficient in any of the four stages, if our behavior is insufficient in any of the four stages, it will not become a habit. Eliminate the cue and your habit will never start. Reduce the craving and you won't experience enough motivation to act. Hmm. reduce the craving, and you won't experience enough motivation to act. Make the behavior difficult and you won't be able to do it. And if the reward fails to satisfy your desire, then you have no reason to do it again in the future. Make the behavior difficult. This is the point I would really like to stress upon. When you want to pursue success, anything good for us, what the problem actually is that it's too difficult and we don't do it. You have a book, that's the cue. You have the craving, you want to read it, but what you do, you make it difficult. You set your own goals. I want to finish this in 1 week, 2 week, and when you have such a difficult goal, you won't you won't have enough motivation to do it. So whenever you are trying to make a new good habit, you must make it very easy, as easy as possible. If you want to make a habit of reading, start by reading just a paragraph a day, just a paragraph. It might sound stupid, but that's how you actually start doing something new, is to remove the internal pressure, the internal friction. And the same way, if something bad you are doing, is probably because it's easy. It's probably because it's easy. Using a smartphone is easy. Watching a movie is easy. All you do is you lay down on your couch or sit in your chair and you just press play button. That's why we watch dozens and dozens of movies in an year, because you don't need to do anything. So most of our bad habits are easy and good habits are hard. That's one of the reasons. So if you want to make a new good habit, make it easy. Make it easy. And try to make your bad behaviors hard as well. For example, when I personally want to use social media, I don't use it on my phone. I use it on my PC. That way there is a little bit of friction. Although I try not to use it, but if I get the craving, I use it on my desktop, not on my phone. That's a little bit of friction I have added. The goal is to not use it in the first place, but if you just think about it, I am not going to use it, it's not going to work, right? You have to add a little bit of friction throughout your life. Together, these four steps form a neurological feedback loop: cue, craving, response, reward, cue, craving, response, reward, that ultimately allows you to create automatic habits. This cycle is known as the habit loop. Yeah, we will discuss feedback loop, what a feedback loop is, later. After decades of mental programming, we automatically slip into these patterns of thinking and acting. Yeah, all of the good and bad habits we have is not because we were born this way. They have been conditioned by our environment. Most of them were since childhood, and some of them we might have picked up 5 6 years ago, and that's become a norm. So after decades of mental programming, we automatically slip into these patterns of thinking and acting. So that's how a habit works. There are four basic steps in every habit. We have a cue, we see something, or we feel something. That's the cue. Craving, we want to, that bit of information actually induces a craving that we want to obtain that, and response, we actually do something about it. And finally, we get the reward. Now you can try to think about these four steps in your own life. What kind of bad habits you have that you want to eliminate using these four steps. Or what kind of good habits do you want to cultivate using these four steps? Also, we will talk about the four laws of behavior change next time. That in that we will talk about how do we actually use these four steps. But for now, it's good to remember that every habit has these four fundamental steps, and these steps can take, they are very automatic. You won't actually feel these things, but they will be there. So I guess this is it for this recording, and I'll see you in the next one.